Welcome back to the garage. We're going to be working on the Sportster again today. If you haven't seen the previous two episodes of this is my friend Mannys Sportster, and it's had a few problems with the bike. It's been neglected a little bit, and we were just doing a few upgrades to it, trying to help a good friend out. So if you haven't seen those, I'll have them linked at the end of this video, and I'll try to maybe put them up in the top cards if I can. But today we'll be replacing the intake manifold gaskets. There's also a weird throttle linkage I'm kind of dealing with, where somebody in previous ownership modified the throttle linkage, and I don't like how it doesn't line up with the cables, so I'm going to see if I can maybe modify that. Hopefully in today's episode I can get these gaskets together and we can get outside. Right now it's the middle of November. Ohio has been blessed with a few, well actually quite a few extended days where we have nice 60-degree sunny days. Those aren't going to last very long. So right around Thanksgiving, the weather is going to kind of take a dip in Ohio. So I'm kind of, at this point, on the clock to get this done. It'll make it a lot easier to tune the bike and have it running outside. I don't have to worry about freezing. With that said, let's dig back into this bike, pull the carb off, pull that manifold out, and see if we can't get this fixed. So right here you can kind of see the weird issue he's got with the cables coming down in the linkage. I feel like this is like binding. So I'm going to compare it to my factory Harley carbs again and just see if there's a way I might be able to fix this situation. And this is mostly because he's running 7/8 bars with not Harley cables. This was just made to work like this for some reason. All right, so in the previous episodes, we discovered that these bolts were loose. And I took a gamble and decided to just kind of torque them back down and see if it sealed. Well, it did not work like that. So I watched a couple videos on YouTube University and a couple of tips on how to not just take this out, but install the new ones to make sure that there's equal tension between these two joints here. So I'm going to work on breaking these loose. I'm not too concerned about these two, but I did soak the back two bolts for over a day in PB Blaster. I'm a little nervous on breaking them loose. All right, that one came loose. The hardest part's getting them to be seated all the way. Oh, I think we got her. Just nice consistent bumps, nothing too hard. Also, I didn't have a tool that would fit down in here, so I took an extra 1/4 inch Allen and just cut about, I don't know, 1/2 inch off, and it fits in here perfectly now to where I can actually get a good rotation. Alrighty, so I got these cleaned up the best I could. They recommend the insides here just being as clean as possible, no damages. Got the intake manifold cleaned up, tried to get as much of the gunk off as I could on this mating surface as well. Everything else came out pretty good. And I also got the surfaces around each opening pretty cleaned off. Had to be pretty careful about that. So they actually recommend putting a little bit of lubricant on these. That way when they go in and you start to tighten them down, they'll actually slide and shift into place and conformity. So this is not tightened down all the way yet. So there's a little bit of play left to right here, as you can tell. The bolts are basically just resting on the flange just enough. So it's not compressing the new gaskets yet. The way this was described to me was I need to mount the carb bracket with the carb. I don't have to hook it up, just put it in there. That way it is centered on this with the carb. And then I will basically start to snug up the back bolts, and then I can come up to the front, snug those up. But you kind of want to do them all in like small increments. That way it will slowly kind of spread the gaskets on and create a very even tension across all of the bolts. The person that I watched online gave a really good analogy. They're like, just imagine you're assembling furniture. If you're assembling a drawer, you're not going to crank one side down all the way and then try to put in the other screw. You're going to do them all kind of loose and then go back around and tighten everything together. So that's what you want to do here. All right, so the intake manifold is all tightened down and ready to go. The next thing I want to address is this is the throttle bracket that the previous owner made. And this is what an original one looks like. So right away, what I'm looking at, this back cable here should go straight up. Over here, the back cable goes up, wraps around, goes up, and then on his application binds onto the screw going into this mount. And I mean, this one is way out here, which is way over corrected, whereas this one comes straight out to the connector still, so it's, you can tell this one's angled. So I have an extra one of these, so I think what I'm going to do is cut these off and then drill out the holes here bigger so it can accept the threaded tapers like on this side, and then that way it will put the cables into the correct positions. All right, so good news is I was able to get this adjusted out and it actually works. And now, the reason I also found that these cables are sluggish is he zip tied the throttle cable on the other side with a bunch of wires so tight that it was crimping down onto the throttle line. So let this be a lesson to people to be careful with your throttle cables. Don't zip tie them so tight. There's no need to. I did have to take off his custom little adjustment because it was so bulky here that it actually got in the way of the cable. So sorry, Manny, you're losing this. But honestly, after I get done tuning this, he should never have to touch this idle adjuster again. Alright, so I took it for a short ride around my area, and the one thing I noticed is it runs good on throttle. It picks up power fine, it doesn't choke. The problem actually arises when I come to a stop and try to idle. You can hear it backfiring sometimes through the intake, it chokes. It seems to be searching for a lot of fuel at idle. I think I have the enricher out 3.5 turns. After 3, it's basically useless, I think. And I've got the throttle plate adjuster adjusted to a point I think is correct, but it's hard to tell because of the pilot jet, I believe. Right now it's got a 42 in there. I think I'm going to pull it all out and put in a 45. It acts like it's running really lean at idle. And I think the 170 main might be pretty good, but we're gonna go up to a 45 pilot. Oh, and I should add too, the intake seals now are not leaking. I did spray for that, I checked. So I eliminated part of the problem. The other problem is probably the lean pilot jet. Well, it seems to be running a lot better, besides my mischief there. This transmission's very, very, I guess, hair trigger, I could say. The clutch cable, I actually kind of adjusted it so it's not so grabby. But yeah, it is just like rearing to go, even with the corrected idle and everything on the bike. It still sounds so different from any other Sportster I've heard. I don't know what it is, and it's supposed to be just an 883. Man, it runs good now though. Runs real good. Before, when I took it out, it was coughing and sputtering and everything when I wasn't on throttle. So that right away was a sign that it was just searching for fuel, and I think it's
partially to do because of this intake. It wants fuel. This whole experience with this bike has been a really like confidence inspiring one for me, because now I'm even looking at my bike, maybe I want to throw a bigger jet in that with a different intake and pick up a little more horsepower. But yeah, she's running good. I'm really pleased with this. I probably had the carb off on this half a dozen times. But I didn't want to do too many adjustments and then not know what went wrong. So it was just a little adjustment here, a little adjustment there, fix this, fix that. Right before the end, the last thing I noticed was when I was putting the carb onto the intake manifold, and then I would put the intake bracket that mounts everything to the heads, it was actually pulling the carb back off the gasket. So luckily Manny brought an extra intake gasket, and I put that on the back of the bracket basically, and that allowed it to push the intake in. So I think that really sealed it up. Totally legal. Totally legal. God, it vibrates so much in these bars. Feels terrible. I don't know how Manny rides this on the highway. I don't even feel this in my bike. But anyways, this is basically it. I'll be probably doing some oil changes with Manny on the side, and hopefully he gets a chance to ride the bike before the weather really changes. I think he is going to be more than ecstatic with what I've done to the bike and how I've improved it. But if you've enjoyed this little mini series, let me know. I'm sure you guys will see Manny in the summertime. Especially in my channel and Jess's, and I'm excited because I know I'll be like wrenching on this bike again in the future, now that I've kind of got my hands all over it. But again guys, thanks for watching, and until next time, take it easy.